Rugby Championship this weekend, folks. Springboks, All Blacks, game number 2 between these sides. The teams have been named. There are multiple changes in both sides with some veterans in and also some youth. We'll go through the squads. I've got some stats for you. The recent history, which is recent as last week. Some predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this rematch a week later is going to go. There is something ultimately very tasty about the fact that they go week to week. You've got 1 week to turn things around, which coaching staff can kind of see some chinks in the armor of the opposition, which side can get it right. I'm very much looking forward to it. The kickoff time is still kind of painful for those of us in New Zealand at 3 a.m., but if last week's game was anything to go by, it was worth certainly watching live. For the Boks, I mentioned the return of some veterans. Willie LaRue is back at fullback. A very different player from Apalele Fassi, who he replaces and is not in the 23 for this one. But he's close to 100 caps. And I feel like in many quarters he gets the credit he reserves, but he's still got his detractors. I look forward to seeing him come in at first receiver to help try and unlock some of the All Blacks defense, because that's kind of what he does in that kind of organizational and playmaking role. The front row is unchanged though, with Ox, Bongi and Franz Malherbe there. They'll be looking to put more pressure on at scrum time. I feel like a few Springboks, probably players and fans, were certainly a little bit, I don't know, they would have liked to get a bit more from the ref at scrum time. They felt like they had the edge, especially with Big Franz. Eben Etzebeth returns to the starting role in the second row. He played the lion's share of last week's game with the kind of chopping and changing with players being injured and HIAs and whatnot anyway. So it's almost like he's starting again, but he was on the bench last week. So it is back to that more familiar starting role for him. And Ruan Nokia proved himself very adept in the air, taking like 10 lineouts in that game last week, so he continues on alongside Big Eben. Sio Kolisi is still in the squad. Geez, that guy's hard as nails. He bloody fractured his face last week when he got hit by Sam Cane. He's back in. I would have thought for all money he was out. My dad reckons maybe he'll be a late scratching. That's not unusual for guys to be named and then, pull out late injury-wise if things don't go according to plan in terms of, the pre-day or pre-match, the captain's run, if it doesn't go according to plan. But the way the Springboks guys do their squad naming, I think if he wasn't fit now, then he wouldn't be named. So he is named at number 6, and he still captains the side. Peter Steph-Tutoy shifts back from that lock role, where he still looked bloody good, to more familiar blindside flanker for this one. Remember, he was the Springboks top tackler last week. He's played a lot of game time this season, but with some of the injuries, that's kind of been enforced on him. And then Jasper Visa, who was good for like the 40-odd minutes he played last week. It was 43. Hadn't played a rugby in a long time, but some big old direct carries and some good work at the breakdown meant his re-addition to the squad was a positive one. Grant Williams also gets a chance to properly start a game at 9. I think it's only his second start for the Springboks, and if memory serves, the last time he started for the Boks, he got knocked out very early. So it'll be a testing one to see how he can run the show from that starting role rather than just being the kind of super sub who adds that bit of zip to the play from the bench. And then the veteran Andre Pollard gets a crack at 10 after seemingly being displaced by Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu for the last few games. Sasha does drop to the bench, so he still is retained within the 23. But there'll be a little bit of internal pressure on Andre. Andre will be wanting to say, hey guys, I'm still here. I'm still a World Cup champion twice. So give me some game time in that number 10 jersey, please. Midfield is the same with Dealende and Creel. Moody being back on the right wing is certainly a welcome addition. Him and Cheslin Colby are on either wing. So Cheslin switches from the right to the left this week with Moody on the right. I really love that duo of the kind of little man, big man. I've got a thing about it. I love it for Scotland as well when it's like Darcy Graham and Duan van der Merwe. Something about it just fits well with me. Caden Moody is genuinely a bit of tall timber and he's pacey as well. And then Cheslin Colby, he can bust tackles. He sat down Scott Barrett last week. He had 6 defenders beaten, which I think was the most of anybody last week of both games. So, yeah, he'll be a handful whichever wing he is on. And then, as I mentioned, Villy is there at the back to pull those strings. Bench-wise, same forward or front row replacements with Marks, Sienekamp, and Koch. Quacker Smith, the super sub, still remains on the bench in the 19 jumper, and then Elrich Lowe is there in the 20 jumper. So it's a 5-3 split for the Boks this week, with Jaden Hendrickson getting his first run of the season. The 21 jumper, Sasha, as I mentioned, dropping to the bench, and then Lucanio is going to get a crack from the bench as well. So yes, a lot of changes for the Boks. Some of the guys have been released to play some Currie Cup rugby with the likes of Ben Jason Dixon, Makazola Mapimpi, and Stephen Kitsoff on that list. So yeah, it's a bit of rotation from Rassi. It's not wholesale changes. Some of it is, pleasing to see, as I said, guys like Kanan Moody back. Remember, there's injuries in the squad too, so it's not all just tinkering. But yeah, I think if you're a Springboks fan, you would still be pretty happy with the way this squad is looking. For the Kiwis, they have also made a few changes, and they also have some injury enforcements, and they've also gone with a little bit of a change of tact in that they saw last week a relatively young bench maybe not have the impact they would have wanted, so they've put some experience on the bench. TJ Perenada is on the bench for this one. Bowden Barrett is on the bench for this one. ALB remains on the bench for this one. So those are all very experienced All Blacks, and they'll be looking to have more impact than we got in that last week, where you felt like the Springboks bench is part of the reason the All Blacks ended up getting the L instead of the W. Front row wise, Tamaiti Williams, Cody Taylor, and Tyrell Lomax. That's the same from last week. A lot of highlight reel plays of Tyrell Lomax is kind of double pumped to help set up one of the tries, but it's scrum time that he'll be wanting to try and help turn the screws for the All Blacks. The front row battle is always a good one between the ABs and the Boks. Scotty Barrett continues on in the second row and captains the side. Will look to not get sat down by a much smaller winger than himself this week, but he'll be also looking to just, do his thing around the park and be that high work rate guy that we know he can be, and Tupavai is alongside him. We obviously still miss the kind of, White Lock and Retallick Lock and duo, but these two guys are forming something of a partnership, so good to see them get some more game time together. Remember, Scotty Barrett missing out on the first couple of games this tournament. Maybe one of the kind of bigger selection, I don't want to say bombshells, but surprises is Wallace Atiti in the number 6 jersey. Ethan Blackadder is injured. He was one of the standout players for the ABs in that game last week, but he's got a hamstring injury, so Wallace Atiti gets the 6 jersey. I say it's a little bit surprising because he's not really a 6. He is more an 8. He has played on the blind side. I think he played on the blind side from the bench against Fiji, from memory. But yeah, he's more of an 8. He has played a bit of 6 before. But in his style of play, dynamic ball carrier, very, very good running up the guts. So we'll see what kind of role he plays in that number 6 jumper. Sam Cane is still there at 7. Remember, he was the AB's top tackler last week with 16, but he'll be certainly looking to bring the tackle height just down because he was probably lucky he didn't get into hot water last week for the hit on Sio Kolisi. I think the referee said they did see it in kind of real time and said it was like a glancing blow, but the dude's face looked pretty messed up after the game, which is not a good look. And then Artie Savia, you feel like we'll be looking to get a little bit more go forward with those ball carries of his. His ball carrying game was kept remarkably quiet because you know what kind of devastation he can create when he gets that leg drive going, when he gets that kind of gangly frame of his moving. He's a hard man to bring down. So impact from him would be welcome from an All Blacks point of view. Cortez Ratsema, also in kind of a surprising pick, gets the number 9 jersey. Razor did say in the selection chat that they wanted to get a look at Cortez starting at some point, so this seems to be a good game to do that, as they also want the kind of experience to end the game. That's where TJ comes in, so that kind of ticks both those boxes from an AB's point of view. Damian McKenzie still continues on at 10. You feel like he'll need to get his kicking boots in terms of the kicking from hand, kicking for territory. That'll need to be spot on in Cape Town if the All Blacks are going to get into the kind of territorial battle. Geordie Barrett and Rico continue on in the midfield. Mark Talea is promoted from the bench to the left wing this week. Caleb Clark's injury hasn't helped that in terms of the kind of consistency in the AB selection, because you feel like if the guys that are out, Clark and Blackadder actually had two of the better games for the ABs as well. Sever Reese is recalled into the 23 and he slots in on the right wing to make way, to fill in the gap left by Will Jordan, who switches to fullback. He's not had a lot of games for the ABs at fullback, has Will Jordan, but Razor pretty much exclusively had him as a fullback for those last number of years at the Crusaders. So, yeah, Will Jordan did go to fullback in that, was it this game against Argentina at Eden Park? And maybe didn't have the kind of impact that we would want, but you've seen Will Jordan, he's a world-class player, gets himself into space, he's got unbelievable gas, so if he can get himself into space, look out, because he is lightning and he's got a heck of a try-scoring record. And Sever Reese has also got a pretty decent kind of eye for a kick-in field from that right wing as well. So if he's kicking for Will Jordan to run onto some balls, kicking in from that right wing, could be one to look out for, because Will Jordan will certainly have the gas on Vili Leroux if they are both competing for a ball, which has managed to find some grass. Bench-wise, Almua, Tuangafasi and Newell. Obviously, we don't know any of those guys getting a yellow card, because that's where the ABs got punished last week in terms of Tuangafasi. Derry is also there. He didn't get much game time last week, but he has been largely one of the kind of outstanding guys of this new crop of All Blacks coming through. Luke Jacobson is preferred in the 20 jumper. Apparently, Dalton was back fit, Dalton Papali'i, but they've opted for Jacobson. Jacobson gives that versatility to cover all three spots in the back row. He's back fit after missing a few games injured. TJ ALB and Bowden Barrett I already mentioned as the kind of back replacements. I promised you guys some stats. Last week, the South Africans conceded 7 clean breaks, which is a little bit higher than normal. Not the highest they've had this year. They had 8 in that loss to Ireland, and they had 9 in that Portugal game, but the Portugal game was almost like an exhibition game. And remember, the Boks had a red card early on, so there was a little bit more space. But, it's a little bit higher than what we've seen from the Boks in kind of recent times, so they'll be looking to tighten that area up. But then the All Blacks are a good attacking team and get line breaks against most sides, so it's not a drastically high number, but I feel like it will have been a talking point for the Boks midweek. Line out was good percentage-wise, 92% is better than it has been for the Boks in earlier games this year, but you feel like they would like some of those balls to be a bit cleaner. 92% doesn't tell you how many of those were clean catches and how many of those were under a little bit of pressure. Turnovers won last week was massive, 7. The breakdown from the Boks was phenomenal. That's the most of any game for the Springboks this year. Their previous high was 4 in a couple of games, so affected the breakdown clearly evident there. Penalties conceded, only 5 is fantastic. Their previous best this year was 8. So if you can keep the discipline right, you kind of putting your best foot forward in terms of getting a good result, aren't you? And it's a good turnaround from when they played Australia. I think both games against Australia, the Boks conceded more than 10 penalties. So cleaning up the discipline is certainly, did the Springboks a favour in that game against the ABs. Discipline, it costs you, man. They broke 28 tackles from the New Zealanders, which is more than anyone has managed against the Springboks, against the All Blacks this year. But it's been close. There's been a couple of other games where the All Blacks have missed a similar number of tackles. I think 25 in one game, but 28's a lot of busted tackles against an All Blacks defence, which usually doesn't miss that many. From a New Zealand perspective, I mentioned the penalties, man, way too high last week. 14 penalties conceded. Anytime you're getting into double figures, you're getting into sketchy territory, and when your opponent only concedes 5, you're putting yourself in a really tough position. So you need to clean that up. I mean, the All Blacks did say kind of midweek that they were kind of asked, is it tough having a Northern Hemisphere referee when, you got some of the South African guys in the URC, so they're more used to the refereeing calls. But, I mean, they said they need to, do their homework, and they thought they did their homework, but you need to adapt to the referee's interpretation. So, from a flip side of the box, it's kind of a disappointing one for the ABs, because that's an increase on the kind of recent penalty counts, especially against England. I think the All Blacks penalty counts were pretty good. I think it was 10 or more against Argentina, but not quite 14. And it's not all negative, though. There was still some pretty nice passes in that game. Quick hands. They had 6 offloads to none from the Springboks last week. The All Blacks can get that passing game going. We saw that second try. They got turnover ball. Like guys like I mentioned, Tyrell Lomax getting his hands on the pill, Will Jordan off his wing, final pass to Caleb Clark. It's pretty nice stuff when they get it going. Most comfortable we've seen for a while against like a strong defensive side, the likes of the Boks. And 3.56 meters a carry is solid enough. Like one of the things I was worried about going into that game from an All Blacks point of view was Game 1 England and Game 1 Argentina. The All Blacks really struggled just to get that go forward ball. They still didn't get like fantastically high numbers. They're still below the magic number of 4. And there was like an early period in the game where they went like 20 odd phases. Didn't get a heck of a lot of go forward, but it's solid enough that they'll be encouraged that if they can stick those kind of offloads and they can pick those right moments, it is possible to get some go forward ball against the Boks. But you've also got to think the tries from the All Blacks last week came from a maul, came from an intercept, came from a line-out move, and came from turnover ball. So it would be nice to see the All Blacks, from our perspective, go through 15 phases and just unlock the Springboks defense and score a try. I mean, set play tries are beautiful as well. Turnover ball is the ultimate time to punish a defense which is not ready, but also would be nice to see us just be able to unlock that Boks defense. Recent history between the sides is still 3 wins to 2, but those 2 All Blacks wins are the oldest of the last 5. The last 3 games have all gone to the Boks. That World Cup warm-up match at Twickenham, 35-7. The World Cup final, 12-11. And then last week's game, 31-27. So the Boks, they did 3 in a row over the All Blacks back in 2009. But if you want to find a time where they went 4 wins in a row or more against the All Blacks, you've got to go back to a big run from 1937 to 1949. Obviously missing out those World War II years. The Boks win, I think, 6 games on the trot against the All Blacks, including a win at Eden Park. But that's a long time ago. So it's been a long time since the Boks have managed 4 in a row against the All Blacks. It would be a massive achievement if they could get it done. They are at home, so there's no better chance to do it than this one. But the All Blacks' last game at Cape Town was a win back in 2017. That was 25 points to 24. Remember, that was the kind of follow-up game to that 57-0 game. Like the Boks had been well beaten over here in NZ, and then they bloody almost bounced back with a win. But the All Blacks managed to kind of sniff that one just by a point. Average score across the last 5 games is 24-23 to the Boks. So she's a very tight one between these teams. It is at Cape Town. Obviously, this time it's not at Newlands. It's at the Cape Town Stadium, DHL Stadium, because last time the All Blacks played in Cape Town, Newlands was still a thing. Sadly, not anymore for me as a kind of lover of those old rugby stadiums. But anyway, predictions-wise, the bookies are saying the Boks by 3 points. And the Rugby Forecast algorithm agrees Boks by 3 points. So predicted to be another tight one. It is a 5 o'clock local kickoff at Cape Town. It is Matt Carley who is the referee from England. He can be a bit of a stickler. So I really hope the All Blacks discipline is much improved. And remember, this is a chance for the Freedom Cup as well, which the All Blacks have held since 2010, which is a long time between drinks. So a lot of these South African players will have never had the Freedom Cup before. So a little bit of extra spice to play for. If these teams can go through a period of kind of parity, the Freedom Cup could get really tasty, because traditionally it's been the Bledisloe Cup that we look to retain more. But we've had that thing for bloody God knows how long, 20 plus years. So yeah, Freedom Cup, if the teams are relatively even, could be a very kind of tasty series. If you guys are in the States and want to watch this game live or on demand, or all the other Rugby Championship games as well, check out Flow Rugby. That's a link down in the description. It's an affiliate of the channel. You guys let us know your thoughts on how you think this one is going to go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would appreciate it. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.